It's often never too late to revive an orchid, even one looking as sorry as this. Even though it is in what would be considered an ideal container and with an ideal media. So we need to understand the difficulties this poor plant has gone through to look like this and what we can do to fix it so that it can grow healthily again. Welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. So our desperate little friend here is Prosthecea radicans, one of those ones that has been bounced around a bit between Epidendrum and Cyclea, but settled back into Prosthecea. And it's not really looking very healthy at all. It's incredibly dehydrated. But this mix should theoretically be ideal, and where we used to be, it was. What we've got is large bark chunks spread around the outside of this wire hanging basket. So the medium-sized orchid bark in the middle doesn't fall out. And this should provide that excellent air movement and drainage that it needs, but it's drying out too quickly. And the difference is it's only been moved, if it's over 1 kilometer, I'd be lying, from where our propagation used to be, and it's now at home. Why would that make such a difference? Well, for one, here we're north-facing slope, there we are on a south-facing slope, and there also in a valley with a river at the bottom. Here we just have a wide open view. So our humidity levels are significantly lower here. At the moment, we're in early spring, the rains haven't started yet, and our humidity levels during the day are as low as 30%. So this media just isn't holding enough water or moisture that this plant needs. The Prosthecheas like to stay a little bit moist throughout the year. They don't like that drying out period. Otherwise, this is what happens. They just desiccate and the pseudobulbs wrinkle. The new growths just die off. We need to make sure that we can get this into a media that's going to hold more moisture while still allowing all this good air movement that it likes. Remember, these plants are from the neotropical regions. What is neotropical, you ask? Well, just a fancy word to say tropical Americas. So all the way from about Mexico all the way down to about Paraguay, I believe. And with this broad distribution, they're actually incredibly hardy orchids. It's just that drying that they don't like. They generally don't mind warm conditions, but they prefer intermediate to cool growing conditions to really flourish very well, because they are generally found in those higher mountainous regions where they get that coolerness in the air. So let's have a look and see what happened here. First of all, what we do is we just give it a bit of a soak for about 5 or 10 minutes, whatever you feel is best. Not only is this going to help with the rehydration of the plant, but also allow for those roots to become a little bit more supple. So any of their live roots aren't going to be broken as we remove it. So it actually feels like it's just popping off the top anyway. So let's just pull it out and have a look. So never just yank on your orchid, always try and tip it out so you're not putting any stress on the plant itself in case any of the roots are still attached. There we go, we see how easy that did come out. We can just remove all the media, and we can see the media is still in extremely good condition, no decomposition having taken place. We just how recently this had been repotted and how fast it had gone backwards afterwards. So all we do is we can just rinse off any of the media. None of it has really been attached. Oh, there's a few little pieces attached to the roots, so it had tried to grow. Obviously was happy at some point, and then obviously it just got too dry and wasn't able to continue growing. But I'm not going to be doing too much to it. I'm going to be leaving these attached pieces of bark because the plant is in such a sorry state as it is, and the bark is still in perfect condition. So we're not going to disturb that too much. We'll just make sure those roots are nice and moist. And we'll just put that bark aside and then go see what needs to be removed. Of course, nice sanitized equipment and sharp. These little sharpeners are my best friend. I don't need to get these professionally sharpened anymore because these do an amazing trick. It's just 5 or 6 slides across at the angle of your secateur's blade, and you'll be amazed at how well it actually works. I never rub my finger across the top of the blade because that's generally when I cut myself. So now that we've got nice sharp blades, we can see where this poor plant needs just a little bit of TLC. We'll just remove any of the dead parts just to avoid any the joys of outdoor content creation. Sorry, excuse the technical difficulties and perhaps a camera angle change. Outdoors, the wind tends to like to blow things over. So where were we? Okay, we were just looking to see what parts of this orchid need to be removed. So any of these old parts that have sort of dried and desiccated off, we'll just strip back any of the leaf coverings or leaf sheaths that are there. Just being careful we don't actually damage these tender parts, because this is so dehydrated, it's going to make it very easy and brittle for that to be able to snap off. This one we can feel it's moving a lot, so we'll just leave those leaf sheaths on just to help give it that little bit of support until it can grow strongly enough. We have this one old back bulb in the middle, this one, and we'll just trim that off. Part of the rhizome there also looks like it's dried off, but we'll leave it all attached so that we have one single piece to plant back into the basket. This section is not going to go under the soil, and it's dried out, desiccated, so it's not really going to cause any problems. If it was wet and mushy, it would be another story. What we're going to do again is, because I like that look of the bark on the outside edge, I don't like the look of the shade cloth or any of those other coverings terribly much. I'm just going to do the same as what I had been done originally, using the larger pieces of bark in and around the wire basket to hold the smaller bark in place. But this time I'm going to be a little bit more clever, and because we have less humidity in the air, I'm going to be using some extra sphagnum moss to hold moisture around the roots of this orchid so that it can at least be a little bit happier. And I'm just going to be reusing the same bark again. This is not always ideal to do, especially if your plant is looking sick due to disease conditions. But if it's just through something like desiccation, then, and your bark is still in perfect condition, rather use it for the same orchid as opposed for a different one. Let's just carefully pack these bark pieces into position. Now all we're looking to do basically is just to cover up those large gaps in the wire so that the smaller bark pieces aren't going to fall out. We'll just put a little bit of sphagnum moss down at about the bottom, and then mix it in with the bark as we go. Here we see all the roots are going to be spread around the surface of this hanging basket, so I don't need to leave too much space. I can go in and fill up relatively full without too much of a worry. Just breaking the bark up so that we don't have straight lines that curves around with the baskets to allow for more space in the center for that media. So what I'm going to be doing is doing approximately a 50-50 mix with the smaller bark chunks and the sphagnum moss. So, and again, these Prosthecheas come from those tropical mountainous areas, and they generally used to having between 50 and 70% humidity. So that 30% is really not good for it. And it's funny how just a change in your aspect and location can make such a big difference to the growth of your orchids. So you always have to look at these factors when you're looking at repotting or potting up or moving orchids around. You have to understand your climate a little bit better so you can just do those adjustments to the media or the container to help your orchid cope better with the situation that you're going to be putting it in. And then just going in around the top, just filling in any of those large air gaps with some of these little bark chunks, not pushing it down. I don't want to compact the media, especially when you've got sphagnum moss in it. You don't want to compact that sphagnum moss into a tight ball that can hold far too much moisture for far too long. These orchids probably only like to dry out to about 70 or 80% of the moisture content before you water them again. Unlike cattleyas that you want to allow to almost dry out completely, these you want to keep some moisture in them. It looks almost identical, but it's got the addition of that sphagnum moss that's going to help hold the moisture better and hold the moisture for longer, so that in the slightly lower humidity levels, it will last better. Also this year the temperatures have been unseasonably warm right through the day and even into the evenings. So we haven't had that chill in the evenings that we usually get during this period, and that hasn't allowed dew to form. So with the air moisture content being so low and the temperatures not going down, we haven't been getting dew, and that's been affecting all of our plants. So we've had to increase our watering regime, and something like this that's just been hanging up in these warm winds with low humidity just dry out far too quickly. So orchid care is about being able to adapt your plants and what you've planted them in to suit the environment as it changes, so that your plants can be happy and produce those amazing blooms that you want. So there may be a little bit of trial and error and then adaptation along the way, but that's what makes this all the more fun and enjoyable, and makes it all the more satisfying when you get your plant into that beautiful healthy condition that it wants to be in. Prosthecheas like nice bright lit conditions, so a nice filtered sunlight but not direct sun. They also like humidity levels between about 50 and 70%, and they like to stay slightly moist. So give them a good watering once a week, once every 9 days or so, depending on your humidity levels, of course, and your temperatures, so that the media itself doesn't dry out completely. Also, they like excellent air movement. The more air movement you can give them, the better. And the temperatures can be anywhere from warm to cool growing conditions. They're really not terribly fussy with that, because of that broad range of distribution that they've been able to adapt to. This is just a generalization for Prosthechea care. Certain ones may need more specialized conditions. This is just a general approach. And feeding of Prosthecheas, they can actually be fed throughout the year. Depending on the situation you're keeping them in, they're not going to go through a dormant period, and they'll keep growing right throughout. And when I say it's often never too late to attempt to save an orchid, is because they fight to survive. They're real fighters, and as long as you're giving them the conditions where they can put up a fight, they're going to, and they will win. They don't give up as easily as what we do. Thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.